Hello all! This week I will be going over some of my dream pets. Does anyone care? Probably not. Am I going to go over them anyways? You bet! While I am planning to own some more animals in the future, and in a way this video can be treated as a little roadmap for upcoming content of this channel, realistically I will never be able to maintain a large collection of animals due to my lifestyle. That being, I work full time and also I enjoy traveling. On top of that, I don't just want to provide my animals with the bare minimum, so even if I have more time, I would still not have the space for all the enclosures and equipment I need for a large collection of pets. That being said, I do enjoy speculating, so here is my list. I decided to divide it up into 4 categories. First, probable animals that I feel quite confident in acquiring in the near future, as I believe I will be able to take care of them properly under my current circumstances. Secondly, we have the category unlikely but not impossible. Animals I could accommodate, but it would take a lot of work on my part. Oh, the snake is knocking something over. What are you knocking over? So there was a box of clothespins on the ground and the python knocked that over, so no big deal, everything is fine. Where was I? Right, yes, unlikely but not impossible, which are animals I wouldn't have unless my lifestyle changes drastically. Lastly, we have the category never gonna happen unless I suddenly get extremely wealthy, and at that point it's probably better to donate some of that excess money to charity instead of investing it into stupid vanity projects, or never gonna happen for short. I think that category is quite self-explanatory. Also, before we proceed, I would love to hear about your dream pets, so feel free to share your lists in the comments below. So let's begin with the probable category. These are the pets that I would like to get as soon as I find a new job and move out of the hellhole I am currently stuck in. Firstly, we have milk snakes. I don't see myself ever owning more than 4 snakes, and I already have 2, but I know for certain that the milk snake would be one of those. I find them extraordinarily beautiful, and I feel like they're often overlooked in the hobby. The color and patterning of the wild types is simply spectacular, and there are a wide variety of species and subspecies to choose from. Personally, I love the classic look seen in the Pueblan or Nelson's milk snakes, but as I prefer to adopt my animals, the kind of snake I may get will likely be based on what I can find in my immediate environment. Luckily, the care requirements of milk snakes are very similar to those of corn snakes, making them fairly low maintenance pets. So this is an animal I could easily integrate into my current life. Next, I'm going to talk about fish. Although the current focus of this channel are my pet snakes, I was actually a fish appreciator long before I became a weird snake person. And do you know what kind of fish are my favorite fish? Catfish. They are so delightful, especially the bigger, plumper ones. I mean, look at this. How is this not the cutest thing ever? Therefore, I would really love to be able to keep a small collection of catfish in the future. However, there is a very wide variety of catfish species. In fact, did you know that 1 in every 20 vertebrates is a catfish? And not all of these species make suitable pets. In fact, there are quite a number of catfish that would make absolute awful pets due to their size. Not that that stops certain numpties in the hobbies from trying and usually failing to keep them anyway. But there are some examples of catfish species with a reasonable size that I could probably keep in a typical commercially available aquarium. For me personally, the upper size limit of a feasible catfish is around 30 centimeters or 11.8 inches in length, and that's already pushing it. So here are some examples. Another fish I could imagine myself owning is a Betta Fish. They don't need a lot of space, and they don't have an incredibly long lifespan either. Once again, I would like to adopt one, and based on the listings I saw on Le Bon Coin or French Craigslist, there seem to be quite a few people selling or giving away their fish in fully equipped aquariums, some of which look really nice. Next on my list is another aquatic creature. This absolute unit known as Xenopus laevis, or the African clawed frog. Again, look at it. Who wouldn't want this as a pet? Fun fact, these are actually model organisms used to study developmental biology. And they also used to be used for pregnancy tests back in the day. By injecting a urine sample into the back of a female frog, you would be able to tell if someone is pregnant or not based on whether the frog developed eggs. Luckily, we have since invented antibody tests, so this is no longer a thing. Another fun fact is that in my childhood, I actually had an aquarium for a few years, and in this aquarium lived 3 fully aquatic dwarf clawed frogs. Now, these aren't quite the same species, but they are related. These were a blast to have in the aquarium, and their names were Dicus, Dunus, and Medius, which roughly translates to Thiccus, Thinnus, and Medius, named so after their respective sizes. Lastly, we have tadpole shrimps, or Triops, as they are known in Germany and France, where these animals are popular enough that there are entire communities dedicated around keeping them, which a bit weird, but I'm not one to judge, okay? These crustaceans have a lifespan of around 2 to 3 months. They have a fascinating life cycle that starts out from dry eggs, from which hundreds of tiny little babies emerge that will then eat everything and anything including each other, until you are eventually left with a handful of individuals that can reach lengths of up to 7 centimeters. If you want, you can dry the eggs out after the adults die and then use these eggs to establish the next generation. They are so easy to keep that you can actually buy a Triops set for little kids for like €20 online, although personally I would prefer to keep mine in a nano aquarium, as this is probably better for the animals. Now, on to my next category. Possible pets, but very unlikely. First in this category is the Brazilian Rainbow Boa, or BRB. These are absolutely stunning animals that do not get too large and appear to have a great temperament and feeding response for a pet snake. They are also the closest relatives of the anaconda, which is kinda cool. My main issue with rainbow boas is their environmental requirements, specifically regarding humidity levels and the presence of water. Setting up an appropriate enclosure for these guys would be quite the hassle and not something I can imagine myself doing anytime soon. Sure, I could probably successfully keep it alive by sticking it in some kind of minimalist rack or tub setup. However, I believe in this little concept called animal welfare, maybe you've heard of it, that states that an animal should not only be free of discomfort, but also able to express its full range of natural behaviors. And, in the case of the BRB, this involves basking, climbing, and swimming, which means I would need a fairly large enclosure with a warm spot of 30 degrees Celsius, UVB, a pool large enough for the animal to submerge itself fully, like properly, not just a shallow water bowl, and I would need to be able to maintain an ambient humidity of around 70%, so I would probably need some kind of misting system. However, as I also wouldn't want anything getting stale and moldy in there, I would probably then also need to install some kind of ventilation system. So an example of the kind of setup I would be aiming for is Dylan's setup from the Reptiles at Home podcast. When I look at that kind of terrarium build that he and other people are capable of, and then I look at my experience assembling my ball python's enclosure, and then I look at their installations again, and then I look at my setups, I hear this little voice inside my head say,
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
So yeah, unless my circumstances and DIY skills change drastically, or I am able to hire someone to set everything up for me, a BRB is not gonna be a thing anytime soon. On the subject of boas, another amazing pet would be an emerald tree boa, but then again, the setup is a bit too complex, and secondly, these animals are incredibly expensive. Another animal in this category is the blue-tongued skink. I love the way they look, the way they move around, and I find them absolutely adorable in general. They are fairly low maintenance pets for lizard standards, however not low maintenance enough to be compatible with my current lifestyle, so it's doubtful that I would get one. Do you sense an ongoing trend here? And then we have crabs. Yes, crabs. I am generally not too interested in keeping invertebrates as pets with the exception of Triops, but crabs are another notable exception. I mean, look at them. How cool are they? Common pet crabs include rainbow land crabs and vampire crabs, but I really have a soft spot for the larger species such as the Indonesian land crab, which I could literally order to my apartment this very instant because our modern consumerist culture is kind of messed up. However, similarly to the blue-tongued skink, they are a bit too high maintenance for me due to the kind of feeding and terrarium maintenance they require. And then lastly, we have the most unlikely pets of them all, and probably the thing on my list that will get me the most flack, and that is interspecific hybrid snakes. I am fascinated by the concept of interspecific hybridization. Crosses between species that have diverged evolutionarily are just super interesting from a genetic as well as morphological point of view, and the further apart these species are, the wilder the outcomes can be. It may be because I'm a plant scientist, and if you know anything about plants, you will know that they are pretty out there at the genomic level. Hybridizations and multiple rounds of genome duplication are quite common in the plant kingdom, leading to species with some of the nastiest and wildest genomes known to science. Animals, however, are a bit less flexible, which makes the interspecific hybridizations that do occur all the more interesting. Hybrids you are probably aware of are pizzly bears, ligers, zorses, and mules. And yes, there seems to be some kind of requirement for these to have the most ridiculous names known to mankind. But my personal favorite is the Sturddlefish, the offspring of an American paddlefish and a Russian sturgeon, two species which diverged over 184 million years ago. Just as a reference, human and mice diverged only around 96 million years ago. So for these two fish to be able to breed is absolutely insane, even for plant standards. Interestingly, snakes also appear to hybridize quite well. Notable examples can be seen in the corn snake and king snake families and the pythons. Personally, one of the kinds of hybrids I find the most interesting are hybrids between milk snakes and corn snakes, although again, there are so many out there. I wouldn't mind owning or even producing hybrids between closely related snake species. However, I know that if I do so, I would only keep them for myself, i.e. not make them available to the public or use them in long-term breeding projects, because while I personally don't have an issue with hybridizing pets that would not come into contact with wild populations, I don't know how people would react to these animals and what they would do with them. This is also why I could never be a breeder in general. Fortunately for all parties involved, this is something super theoretical that will probably never happen in real life. Speaking of things that will never happen in real life, let's get to the last category, pets that are never gonna happen. Number 1 on this list is definitely the beautiful, beautiful red-tailed catfish. This is probably one of my favorite catfish. They are just so lovely, you just want to hug them. While they start out as these adorable little babies, they quickly grow into hefty chonkers that can max out at around 1.4 meters or almost 5 feet, which is the length of my ball python. Now, unless you have an aquarium the size of a large pond, this is not the fish for you, or for me for that matter. Actually, on the subject of giant catfish, if I had the facilities for a red tail, I may also consider a European Vels. This lovely species is native to Europe and can attain lengths of 3 meters or 9.8 feet. As I live in Europe, I could probably keep it in a large garden pond if I had one, but it would probably have to live there alone, as I would doubt any other animals would be left alive if cohabited with the wels. Once again, I can simply order this fish to my apartment online right now, no questions asked, which is pretty wild if you ask me. Lastly, the most hardcore catfish to own would probably be the Mekong giant catfish, reaching lengths of up to 3 meters and a weight of up to 300 kilograms. This is the largest freshwater fish in the world. Having an aquarium large enough to host a Mekong giant catfish would be the biggest flex, and 1000% more impressive than any kind of mansion or designer brand out there. Next on my list are big chonky snakes, especially reticulated pythons. From what I've heard and seen from other keepers, they seem quite active and inquisitive for their size, which is nice because sometimes large snakes don't exactly seem to be the brightest bulbs. For an animal this size, I would need an entire room, as, once again, I believe a snake should be able to stretch out fully along its enclosure, as this is part of the natural behavior they display in the wild. In case of my large snakes, this would mean enclosures that are multiple meters in length. I mean, the coolest thing would be a walk-in greenhouse type area simulating their natural environment. Imagine that. One could even turn it into some kind of animal cafe where people could sit and chat with large snakes lounging around in the background. I would call it the Snake Shack, or maybe Schlangenstube if it's in Germany. Luckily for everyone involved, I do not have the means to open a large snake cafe, and that is probably for the best. And at the very end of my list, since we're, living out our wildest dreams here, is a horse. Yes, I'm one of those horse people, not an active rider anymore, but I still think they are some of the coolest animals. I feel like with horses you either hate them or love them, but I'm definitely a horse lover. Now, my favorite kind of horse are those hefty cold bloods because, they just look awesome. But since I want to have time in my life for other hobbies, and I do value having some kind of disposable income, a horse is definitely not the pet for me. And with that, it's time to end my weird list. I hope you found my ramblings at least mildly entertaining. Feel free to leave a thumbs up if you did for the algorithm or whatever. My next video will probably be a ball python terrarium tour, as I haven't done a proper one yet. So there's that. Anyways, thank you for watching and goodbye.